How's it going, folks? Thanks for checking the video out. 2024 coming to an end, and it's been a big year for me in terms of mixing, in terms of creating content, in terms of music in general. And I wanted to kind of sum up the year in 5 things that have really helped me and really helped me take stuff to the next level. And maybe these are things that are going to help you in 2025, or maybe these are things that you've been doing as well and you just like to have them in one place. I don't know. But here we go. Here's 5 things that have really helped me in 2024 in my mixing. The first one is the tool for the job. And I mean this in terms of, we all have so many plugins, and Black Friday's we've been collecting plugins. It's just what we do. But it's about the right tool for the job, and knowing that one tool won't necessarily get you that sound the same as another one will. Take a look at these 2 EQs. So I've got the same track, just duplicated. One has got a Neve style EQ on it. One has got an SSL style EQ on it. And take a listen to the SSL first and then the Neve. And it's a very, very different sound. With the Neve, you get that real brightness, that real aggression. And even if I were to change the frequency, change anything in this plugin, I'm not going to get the same as the Neve. Or rather, I could make an SSL sound pretty similar to a Neve, but it would take a lot of fiddling around and a lot of messing around. If the Neve sound is what I'm going for, I'm just going to bring up a Neve style EQ. And this is just the Logic stock one, the one that comes in like their, classic EQs or whatever they call it, vintage collection. And that's been a massive thing for me. It's been about sticking to my guns and keeping what I know works, but just having an arsenal of this tool I know works for this job. I know that a Neve style EQ sounds great on an electric guitar, whereas on a snare drum, I don't particularly like the Neve style EQs. I know a lot of people do. I find them to be very aggressive on the spill, and I don't like gates. Whatever, kill me. But it's just about having the right tool for the right job, and that's really, really helped me. Number 2 is related to loudness and relative volume of stuff. I've really seen the benefit of turning stuff down as opposed to turning something up. And I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, and I know that's a kind of a, well, yeah, Sam, that's what happens with volume faders, but hear me out. Quite often, if you've got a mix that is, well, first of all, if it's peaking, if you're hitting that limiter, then you're going to want to turn stuff down. If you can't hear the vocal, it's not because the vocal needs to be turned up. It's because everything else needs to be turned down around it. And I think that's a really powerful tool. And it's knowing the difference between something needs to be louder and there's a balance mismatch here. Often when you have 2 instruments that are fighting for the same frequency range, the issue will be that you can't hear one over the other. Take guitar and a vocal, for example. You can't hear the vocal because that mid-range of the guitars is getting too much, is burying it. So you've got a few options there. You can turn the vocal up, yeah, but then it's just going to sit above everything. You're going to end up compressing the vocal too much to get it to sit back. It's just a route to nowhere. What you're best off doing is either turning the guitars down, or a much better way of doing it would be to just attack the frequency range in the guitars that is the problem. So maybe something like Neutron's Unmask, just to turn down the guitars when it's an issue. You're not getting rid of all that mid-range, but you're just attacking it when it needs to be attacked. Volume faders go both ways. They can go up, but they can also come down. It's often best to turn stuff down around the thing you can't hear than just turning that thing up, because you're probably going to lead yourself to more problems. On the subject of volume and relative volume, I've found that soloing is useful when you want to just carve out a specific frequency from something. But more often than not, soloing stuff is actually detrimental to your mix and your mixing journey. And what I mean by that is that you're focusing on stuff that the audience or the listeners are not going to hear. Nobody's going to hear your snare drum in solo, so you shouldn't be listening to it in solo. If I just play you an example here on a snare drum. Now, this snare admittedly sounds pretty aggressive on its own. And if that were me, then I would be listening to that and thinking, in solo, it sounds like there's too much reverb, so I'm going to turn that reverb down. Or it sounds like it's got too much high end, or it sounds like there's too much spill on there. And there is some spill, yeah, but when we bring it into the full track, that reverb kind of just gels into everything else. And that's the whole point of a snare reverb, to help it lengthen a little bit and gel it into the whole mix. If you're listening to stuff in solo, that's just for your benefit. You're not actually listening to stuff in the way that other people are going to be hearing stuff. And that is so important. It's something that I've been told so many times, and I tell other people it as well. But it's maybe only this year that I've really come to terms with the fact that the solo button is there, but you don't have to press it. Just listen to the mix as a whole, and even try doing a mix without pressing the solo button at all. There's a challenge for you. If any of you have seen my videos throughout the years, then you'll see that I'm now in a different studio, in a different place. It's probably the third place that I've recorded videos, and the second time in this room that I've actually shifted stuff around. I used to be kind of over there. I've not quite got the acoustic treatment sorted out yet. I've been so busy, I haven't done my SonarWorks and all that kind of stuff. So something that's really, really been helping me out is these little puppies, the Steam Slate Audio VSX. The reason these are great is because I kind of get used to listening through them. And I know that wherever I'm listening to stuff, if I'm listening to these headphones in this room, or if I'm taking them out, if I'm on the train, if I'm on a plane, if I'm in a different room, I know it's always going to sound the same. And monitoring is incredibly important, or reliability and repeatability in monitoring is even more important. Knowing that your bottom end should always sit just here is okay. But if you're going into another room with a different amount of low end, less, more, it kind of throws things up in the air a little bit. So having this is not only a great sounding set of headphones, a great sounding set of emulations that you can use, but it's repeatability. It's knowing that every single day I'm going to be listening to the same thing, the same amount of low end, the same amount of high end, and that's only going to make your mixes better. If you're referencing on them as well, if you're listening to music that you know and love and you know sounds good, most importantly, then it's going to be incredibly valuable for you. Number 5 is another Steam Slate Audio thing. I promise they're not sponsoring this video, but they'd be welcome to. It's about triggering, and it's about knowing that there are times when a trigger is necessary on a snare drum, for example. A time when you've got a snare drum that you just cannot save and you need something there. Or maybe you just need to create a foundation with some one-shot samples, whatever it is. In modern production, it's kind of a carte blanche, isn't it? You can do whatever you want, and that's the way it should be. But I found myself this year reaching for samples a little bit less. And that's been really interesting for me because I sell sample packs. Check them out down below. And I find them useful. I find them a great addition to mixes. But I also find that you discover far more about a mix, or discover far more about an instrument, when you don't automatically just reach for something. You just say, well, what is it that this is missing? Can I get there without reaching for this kind of nuclear solution? Just completely replace the snare. Now, I've done a video on this snare stuff in the past, how to resurrect a dead snare. And I think it's really important because, so here's an example of a snare that I would traditionally just kind of say, wow, I need a trigger on that. Just the top mic on its own, particularly rough. But I said to myself, you know, I'm going to try and make it so that I can actually become a better engineer, become a better mixer, and actually combat these problems with maybe traditional methods. So here's what I came up with. If I show you all the processing and all of my buses, all of that kind of stuff, here's what it sounded like in the end. And seeing as we're talking about not soloing stuff, here it is in the mix. I truly believe that if you come up against problems and you don't just reach for that one thing that you know solves it, but try and think around corners a little bit, then it makes you a better engineer. And moving into next year is something that I'm going to be wanting to do an awful lot more. Hopefully that's been interesting for you. These are 5 things that have really helped my mixes this year. I think my mixes have come on leaps and bounds, and I'd really love for yours to come on leaps and bounds as well. So hopefully those 5 things are going to help you in the same way as they did for me. If there's anything that you found particularly useful in 2024, drop us a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching. See you again soon. Take care.